Hello, book fans. I am here to review Susanna Clarke's Piranesi, which is an excellent book worth reading for sure, 100% guaranteed. She brought you the book Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, or Norech in Welsh. Piranesi, though, is a very different beast, I hear. I've not read the other book. But it's quite a quick read for a start. It's well written, and it's only 240 something pages. So very, very easy to read. I'm not going to show you the end. Or 230. So what's it all about? Well, it's a bit of a fantasy kind of novel, and it takes you through a fantasy world incorporated by Piranesi. This is a protagonist, and he writes in a diary kind of format his daily experiences in this fantasy realm. So I talk about it as a fantasy realm because it's like a lot of halls which cover a huge area. So by halls, I like grand halls in a Greco-Roman kind of style, pillars of alabaster and statues, that kind of business. But also you've got the seasons, the tides, the meteorology coming in within these halls, even though that would never happen in real life because it's not big enough for that kind of behaviour. Maybe the tides actually would happen. But the tides are quite interesting because the halls themselves are on multi-levels. So the very bottom level is the sunken halls, which are underwater most of the time. The kind of next level up is the level that's lived in by Piranesi, and this has tides, so you've got like a sea there that comes in every now and then from the north, from the west, from the east, and he talks about compass coordinates and location and how many halls there are. There's like thousands of these halls, and there's also halls above him as well. These are like the kind of meteorological halls that have clouds in them and rain and stuff that brings him his rainwater and drinking water essentially. Even though we all know that the halls, by the dimensions that are given in this book, are not actually big enough to form clouds that are going to give you precipitation, even in a tropical environment, which is not a tropical environment. It sounds mid-latitude, where you get the summer, warm summer and cold winters, that kind of thing. So the book itself is written in a diary form, and it's written by Piranesi. At least that's the name that he's known as. Piranesi is quite an interesting character. It's all written from his own kind of perspective, of course, but he's also invented his own diary, his own date system. So, for example, each year he names after an event within that year. So this whole diary is from. I'll read it out, shall I? So let's have a look at the content just to get through to it. Not that one. Do trees exist? This is right at the start. So statues. Entry for the 18th day of the 5th month in the year the albatross came to the southwestern halls. So the albatross came and visited him. That's quite a significant and quite a beautiful story as well. So within these halls, there's animals like birds and fish, which he eats. That's how he survives and all that, and seaweeds. But there are not very many people. There's 15 to be precise, and most of them are dead. So here, let's read a little extract here. There are some statues that I love more than the rest. The woman carrying a beehive is one. Another, perhaps, the statue that I love above all others, stands at a door between the 5th and 4th northwestern halls. It is the statue of a faun, a creature half man and half goat, with a head of exuberant curls. He smiles slightly and presses his forefinger to his lips. I have always felt that he meant to tell me something, or perhaps warn me of something. Quiet, he seems to say, be careful, but what danger could there possibly be I have never known? I dreamt of him once. He was standing in a snowy forest and speaking to a female child. So that's the way that he kind of writes, really. Now, throughout the book, it's all diary kind of format. So he's writing his diary about his current findings for the day, and he talks about the statues. He does kind of converse with the statues, more like in his head, I suppose, more than anything. But he also converses with other people. The main one is the one that's alive, probably, which is he calls the other. and they also have the biscuit tin man or woman. Basically, their bones are in a biscuit tin, and he respects the dead people, so he wraps up their bones and gathers them all together and puts them in places. And he'll bring them food and things like that, and he'll talk to the dead people as well. So there's I think 14 other dead characters. There's one that's alive there. And he will also talk about the 16th character. The 16th person is essentially ourselves, the reader, mainly. Because he's talking about the next person who is alive, hopefully, who he will discover, but his main relationship is going to be with the other. So this is an older kind of fella to himself, and he's kind of very resolute and very stuck in his way, and likes to do things his own way. And he'll meet Piranesi like a couple of times a week at specific times for a specific amount of time, and he always seems to be fussing and worrying about stuff that Piranesi thinks is irrelevant, which it may be, it may not be irrelevant, I don't know. You'll find out through the story which parts are important as we get that to unravel. But they're very contrasting characters. Piranesi, because of his way, the way he lives, he's very much a survivalist who's thinking of new ways to survive, how to catch fish with nets and that, how to build things in order to facilitate his survival and the survival of the animals as well. He looks after the budgies, helping them with their nesting, for example, because he talks to them, because he doesn't have other people like friends. I mean, the relationship with the other is more like a colleague, I suppose, because the other will give him tasks to do. And really, I think the other thinks of Piranesi as his assistant in many ways, so he doesn't really think of him too much as a chum. I mean, this kind of relationship is a bit friendly, and it's not entirely as stark as it first begins as, but it's very much on the colleague bit. And if I'm honest, they don't rub up against each other too well, and there is the antagonisms because of the way their personalities have a contrast, which can occur when you're in a very lonely environment where there's just two people working there. And I remember a situation I was in with a very similar character, and I associate myself a little bit more with Piranesi. And yeah, I think I'm getting called in here, so I'm going to have to wrap this video up pretty soon for some fun times. Clearly, there's a bit of a joke going in the background. I'm not going to show you what's happening in the background. I cannot show you that. But how those two characters contrast is a good dynamic. I think it works really well in the book. And for anybody who's worked with somebody who they don't get on with, but they do get on with, and they have to get on with, it's a very interesting dynamic indeed. And how we deal with that, with our coping mechanisms and the frictions, is good. I think it's dealt with really well. I think the way the book's written, I think the diary format that works really is a good way of doing it, because it's like, it's not from the first person. It's not as much in the moment. There's a bit of a contemplative aspect to it. But it does outline some of the more kind of extreme things that do occur really, really nicely, and captures the turning points where critical things occur for the plot. So yeah, it's good. It's a good book, well worth reading. I'd say the first part and the middle part are pretty good, but for me, I think the ending I don't really agree with. In a way, in a big way, quite a big way. I can't tell you why, because that would have ruined the entire story. I can't tell you a great deal more about it, but it is such a short read. I recommend you borrow it from your library in order to smash it out really quickly. I will reread it in the future. Maybe that will occur, because it's a short book. After I've forgotten it, maybe in 10 years' time. So I will be keeping this book and not donating it to charity, but I may lend it out to people. Whether they give it back to me or not, I'm not sure. But it's inspirational kind of writing style, and I liked it. So yeah, 4 out of 5 experience. Maybe I'd say the first part of the book is like a 5 out of 5 experience when it's heavily in the fantasy bit. But there's a lot of questions that will get answered throughout the book. So the most important thing is the story does end. It does have a start, a middle, and an end, and it ends pretty decisively. It doesn't leave you hanging. It doesn't leave you with a pair of blue balls on there. So yeah, it's all good. So for that reason, it's an excellent read and recommended. Anyway, if you've got any questions, drop them down below and I'll try to answer them, but I'll probably mark them with spoilers if they do spoil the plot, because your interpretation of the book might be very different than my interpretation, because it is one of those books that uses your imagination quite thoroughly. Anyway, if you found this useful, you do whatever you want, But thanks for watching. Have a great day out there reading your books.